Hi everyone, I'm back. Happy Wednesday and welcome to week 4 of the vlog series here at Embodied Beings. This is Alexa. I am coming at you today from the ferry terminal on Vancouver Island. I'm on my way to Vancouver from my little island paradise en route to go see a friend who I haven't seen in a long time, so I'm excited for that. Sorry the video is coming a bit late, but it's been a day of travel. And this week I am so stoked to talk to you about a little bit more of a specific topic, and that is yoga therapy and what we call emotional eating. So this, like all the topics in this vlog series, it's something that has affected me personally, but it is also something that has affected a lot of clients who have come to see me, especially women, and even clients who are not clients, even just friends, family members. This is something that I found, like, growing up as a woman, I've had to deal with, and quite a few of my women friends have as well. Men too, but it seems to be not as big of a thing. However, I hope, men, that you can get something out of this too. This is not to discriminate against you. We all have our habits. We all have our tendencies towards dealing with difficult emotions, and sometimes that can be eating, like overeating. This is a big thing. So I want to clarify, first of all, that what I mean by emotional eating is eating to either avoid feeling a certain emotion or try to feel pleasure because other parts of our lives aren't pleasurable. Basically eating when we're not hungry and for other reasons, especially stuffing down uncomfortable sensations or emotions. And that can even be not feeling an emotion that might feel uncomfortable. So this is something that I go through with clients when we talk about, like, the ability to feel things, to feel emotions. And sometimes they say, well, I don't feel anything. And I say, well, are you bored? Are you frustrated when it comes to, like, emotional eating? And they'll say, yeah, actually I am. And I say, well, yeah, that counts. That's an emotion. That's like a sensation, something in the body that we can identify as emotional. So I wanted to clarify that right off the bat. And as for my story, this is something that I have been through for many years, like a lot of the health projects that I've talked to you about so far. Truthfully, and this just came to me this past year, this memory, like, I remember going to my grandparents' house in the summers. I grew up in Connecticut, and I have 10 or 11 amazing cousins. There are lots of you guys. I love you very much. And we would all get together in the summers and, like, play. We would, our parents and the aunts and uncles, they would have parties and we would have barbecues and we would go off and play on our own like kids do. And I have these memories that go as far back as when I was 7 or 8 years old of, like, me being way more concerned about if the chips were gonna run out, like, over on the deck where all the food was, instead of playing kickball with my cousins or going on some adventure in the woods with my cousins, going on a hike or something. And I didn't think anything of it at the time. I was a kid, so I didn't think about it. But then I realize now, at age 29, this is still with me, like this kind of obsession that comes in with food. And I've looked into it quite a lot. Like, sometimes I'm feeling an uncomfortable emotion and so I eat, or sometimes I just want to feel pleasure. I'm lacking pleasure in another part of my life, so I eat. Sometimes my mind is just super, like, crazy, busy, racing around, and to calm it down, to ground into the body, I eat. And yeah, so this has been my experience. I find it especially troubling when I feel there are, like, restrictions on my eating. So, for example, I just finished a several weeks practice, a yoga practice, where I was doing this practice twice a day, every day, and I had to be on an empty stomach to do the practice. And I already have slow digestion as it is. So I was having to like really time my meals and not really snack so that I could do this practice, which was important to me. And I swear to you, that was the hardest part about the discipline, was just not actually doing the practice, but knowing like, oh my God, well, I'm not going to be able to snack beforehand here, and now I have to wait 4 hours until I do my practice, and I wonder if I'll have time to eat afterwards and digest before I go to bed. Like getting really kind of obsessive about this, but I was aware of it, so it was there. And I moved through it, but I just wanted to give you a bit of a context. So even though, like, yes, I'm a practicing yogi and I consider that a big part of my life, I still struggle with these seemingly small things or simple things. So they're still there. Sometimes it can be a predisposition to this kind of thing, like we see it in addictive type personalities, or even certain astrological signs can have a predisposition to it. As a Taurus through and through, I love food, so that's there. What else? Certain Ayurvedic constitutions can have a predisposition to going towards food and overeating or eating for comfort. So there are a lot of things at play. Also childhood wounding, like our wounds and our traumas from childhood. Something that shifted the mind so that it seeks the like elimination or the getting rid of an uncomfortable emotion through eating food. It's one of the most like basic things that we have access to, especially as kids. So this can happen. It's really, really common. And I want to talk to you about some of the yogic aspects of it and why yoga works. That's why we're here on this blog. Like, how does it work? Why does it work? What can we do to help ourselves? And I want to mention that like mindfulness. So first of all, mindfulness is a big part of this. And we talk about this a lot in meditation, in yoga, even health coaches that I've worked with who have been super helpful in giving me everyday tips for working with mindful eating are pushing this mindfulness. And of course, like for good reason, mindfulness is really, really important when it comes to recognizing what we're doing. And when I talk about mindfulness and emotional eating or unconscious eating, it's the difference between like just suddenly slipping into, oh my God, I want to eat that whole bag of cookies, and just going for it and not even realizing as it's happening or after it happened that like, oh my gosh, that just happened, and catching the impulse to do that and stopping for a moment and thinking, wait, am I aware of this moment? Like, am I actually aware of what I'm doing? So that's what I'm talking about when I say mindfulness. It's just being aware. So developing that witnessing consciousness to be able to step back and see like, oh, okay, I'm doing this action. I'm not just, slipping into it unconsciously. So mindfulness as a practice is super important. It establishes in yoga therapy what we refer to as the freedom gap. So it disrupts this patterning in the brain, this neural patterning of like impulse to go do something, or feeling an uncomfortable emotion, impulse to go eat, and doing it, following through with the action, as opposed to uncomfortable emotion, impulse to go eat, and like pausing, and just pausing. Even if it's for 10 seconds or a minute or 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and we still carry through with the action of like going to eat to soothe that emotion, it disrupts the patterning in the brain. So this is how mindfulness is something that works over time. The thing is, sometimes mindfulness isn't 100% accessible. I don't know if you've ever felt like this. I certainly have, when like mindfulness is just not cutting it. There's too strong of an uncomfortable sensation or an emotion that's coming up, and I just want the food. It doesn't matter what it is. Like, I just feel like I need it and I want it. And this is where yoga comes in. So yoga meaning like everything under the umbrella of what we work with in yoga therapy: asana, breath work, pranayama, meditation, and relaxing the bodily systems to help to shift like our state of mind so that we're more capable of getting to the space of mindfulness. I discussed this a little bit in last week's video about anxiety and depression, how we can use the body to shift the neurochemistry in the brain, to shift the energy in the body, to get to a space where we can better handle what's going on. And this is what I love about yoga, and even pairing it with things like health coaching, and as I mentioned last week, with psychotherapy. So a couple of things, examples that I use with myself and also with clients for uncomfortable emotions and their connection to emotional eating. Like for sadness, we can look at sadness as something that feels like heavy, depressive. Maybe there's this feeling of an emptiness inside, and there's an impulse to fill it with food. So for this, we have techniques that can lift that energetic heaviness, like lift it up so we feel lighter and not as down and depressed. We have techniques to balance the bodily systems, and especially breathing practices to help like shift the neurochemistry, shift what's going on in the brain. And this, I would say, is the most effective that I've found so far in myself, is the pranayama, the breathing practices to deal with the sadness that can lead to emotional eating. For anger, sometimes we can use cathartic exercises like dynamic meditations where we're like shaking or having some sort of really dynamic movement in the body. But better yet, something that we use in therapeutic yoga, and this is more of a tantric practice that I go into more deeply one-on-one with clients, we can use what we call sublimation of that anger. So if everything is energy, even and especially emotions, we have yogic techniques that can actually transmute that energy into a more refined kind of energy. So use it in a different way. You've possibly experienced this when you're feeling really angry about something and you just have to blow off steam and like you go on a 5-mile run maybe. So this is an example of how we can use the energy in a different way rather than suppressing it. In yoga, however, we're not just looking to have a catharsis or to blow off steam. We're working to pull all that energy like up so that we can use it for better mindfulness techniques and things like that. If this sounds really like kind of off the wall to you, I understand. I would have to go a lot more in depth to talk about it, but it's something that I'll try to go into more in the rest of the vlog series. This transmutation and sublimation of energies. And for the busier, bored mind, I find that it's common for people to eat to just get back into the body, like having a really anxious, ungrounded, chaotic mind. Food has the quality of bringing us back down, so even making us feel heavy, like heavier than normal, just to get out of the mind. This makes sense at a physiological, biological level because we have a lot of blood then pumping into our digestive system, so we can get kind of tired and lazy, but also energetically it can be used to ground the mind. So instead of the eating just for the sake of dealing with anxiety and getting into the body, we can use moving meditations, I like to call them, things like Tai Chi or Qigong or sun salutations in the yogic tradition, to link the breath with dynamic movements in the body so that we can calm the mind down and really just feel the body a lot better without having to go to like stuffing our faces with food to do so. So those are some of the things that we can work on in the short term. And in the long term for emotional eating, the mindfulness and connection between body and breath, those practices, like over time, they more permanently shift the chemistry of the body and balance the bodily systems so that the impulse isn't even there anymore to turn to food for comfort or for grounding or for soothing difficult emotions. And the body is incredibly intelligent in this way, right? So the more awareness we can develop within the body, the more we're able to listen to it. In yoga therapy, we're often working from down up. And by that, I mean we're working with the body ultimately to get into the mind. I mentioned this last week, that working with the body is one of the safest ways to gently, slowly change the patterning of the mind and to assist the mind in practices of awareness and mindfulness. It also develops interoception. This is the word we use to refer to the ability to just feel what's going on in the body. This has happened several times. I have a client come in and I ask them, about their digestion, okay, well, do you feel hungry when you eat? And what kinds of cravings do you have? What did you eat yesterday? And it seems like there's very little awareness, but actually this can be very little interoception. So not really any developed skills in interoception. And yoga helps develop this. It's one thing to be aware and mindful of what we're doing, why we're going to the food to comfort emotions, but if we don't practice the skill of actually feeling sensations in the body, even feeling what it feels like to be hungry or not hungry, or feel stuffed or not stuffed, or feel emotions and identify them, this is a skill. So this is what yoga helps us do over time, and these changes really take root at the physical body. We also develop skills to stay with the present experience. This is what a lot of doctors and researchers have noticed with emotional eating, binge eating disorders, things like that, that there's this resistance to stay in the present moment, in the present sensation, because it's not comfortable. There was an interesting study done in 2010 at Deakin University in Australia. It was 12 weeks, a course of 12 weeks, and they took a group of obese women who were struggling with binge eating and had them do a 60-minute yoga practice just once a week and encouraged them to do a 30-minute yoga practice on their own on other days during this period. And the vast majority, by the end of 12 weeks, they reported better moods, less binging, lower BMI, and less inches on their waistline, so losing belly fat. And this is great. This shows that it was just yoga. They weren't experiencing anything with psychotherapy or anything else, trying to diet. It was just yoga that was helping them develop this interoception of the body, mindfulness skills, and also the skills of staying with the present sensation in the body. And finally, and I'll close with this, as I mentioned in most week's videos, yoga gets to the roots. So whether emotional eating is because of emotional suppression or something deeper, like a pattern that developed from a trauma in childhood, yoga works at all the levels, what we call all of the 5 bodies. So physical, energetic, emotional, mental, and spiritual bodies for very deep overall healing. And this is something that we can look into later on in the vlog. If I keep repeating it, I think people will start to catch on, and I'll explain it more and more each time. But this is part of the magic of yoga therapy. And when it comes to emotional eating, we know that it's not always just about the emotions. So it can be, but it might run deeper. And yoga helps to address this. Thanks so much, you guys. Sorry about the noise. I don't know if I told you I'm at the ferry terminal on the way to Vancouver. And I will be back next Wednesday with the week 5. Yeah, week 5 already, vlog series. If you have any questions or requests for next week's vlog, please send me a private message or feel free to comment under this video. And I hope you guys all have a beautiful, beautiful week. Bye.